People feel like the world is in crisis because of the media. A very simplistic statement. Partially true. The public is scared to swim because they think great white sharks are eating hundreds of people a day, not 5 a year. People are afraid of jihadis that are being protected by the government and allowed to attack the United States, but statistically still one of the rarest forms of death. But the mainstream media doesn't hype people up to scare them, say, about glyphosates in the water, causing, on record, the massive increase in breast cancer that literally kills hundreds of thousands of people a year in the Western world alone. What the mainstream media is not doing is actually letting people know how globally the world is lining up for the type of events we saw in World War I and World War II, but magnified because of the changing technological landscape. I've been talking about this a lot the last few years, this big quickening that was coming, this geopolitical crisis. We'll have increased warfare, increased terrorism, increased asymmetrical warfare, increased financial instability, increased racial and religious tensions, increasing financial crises, environmental crises, because the political class has made the decision to exacerbate those problems and then pose as saviors to supposedly cure those problems to only gain more power. And there's been a mix of that throughout history. There's been different types of elites, some incredibly wicked and evil, some altruistic, as everyone knows. But this time, there's a perfect storm of delusion and decadence and arrogance, not just by the elites, but by the general population of the planet as well, that is creating a witch's brew, perfect storm cascade. And I say I've been talking about this for a couple of years. I've been talking about it for 20 years on air. Just about 20 years in about a month. It'll be 20 years I've been on air. But I've been talking about it intensely for 18. But even more intensely the last 2. And suddenly you see the British Ministry of Defense and the Pentagon and all these other major systems saying prepare for it as well, that it's an inevitability, not just a possibility. And by and large, the Pentagon and Ministry of Defense and police departments and others are not guilty really of anything when it comes to creating the crises. They are then tasked with cleaning up the crisis, which again is another power grab for the establishment. But it's kind of like a billy club going upside your head or a baseball bat for no reason. It may not be guilty itself, but it doesn't matter. It's still the instrument of the destruction. And our biggest problem we face as a species is the complexity of the world and the fact that the establishment has created such centralized compartmentalization. You add that to a decadence cycle that is obviously intensifying. We're in the very bottom of a decadence cycle that if it cascades into a deeper cycle of decadence, it will just be beyond Rome before its collapse. We're already getting there. But we could bottom out, have a soft landing, in my view, and get out of this and really have a new era of prosperity and freedom and learn from our mistakes and get a Nineveh-type reprieve.
Everything we said came true. Everything we've done's been right.
Here are the headlines. Humanoid robots to hit stores. CDC director, Ebola outbreak spiraling out of control. That's a quote. Going to get worse in the very near future. U.S. prepares for Ebola outbreak. Cases may exceed 100,000 by December. The numbers are really scary. The deadly contagion continues to spread. And I'm going to say it again. They had major scientific reports out 2 years ago in major scientific publications confirming African studies carried out by the West where Ebola is airborne. It is airborne in sneeze droplets or spit droplets, sinus droplets, and has been transferred between pigs and monkeys through the air. And it's believed from the beginning it comes from bats flying around, basically crapping in the air, excuse my French, and that people and animals are breathing it. But you've got to have it go directly in. There's a spectrum of airborne. You've got stuff that can live in the air for a long time, like fungus and things, can live weeks, if not months, sometimes longer. They believe the curse of the pharaohs, where so many explorers go in and discover a tomb and then 2 weeks later are dead from respiratory problems, or you can have multi-thousand-year-old deadly fungus in there that our current population is not prepared for and has never experienced, so it's lethal. Now, that's airborne when you've got 3,000-year-old fungus killing people. Ebola only survives a matter of seconds unless it's in microscopic nasal fluid or lung fluid being coughed up into the air. But I've seen very little mainstream media coverage of this. I know Paul Watson wrote about it a few weeks ago. We probably need to write about it again and just say, why won't the media point out that Ebola is beginning to go airborne? And it appears to be mutating and becoming stronger. They've said that. It now gestates or goes through its incubation period over a much longer period of time, allowing it to spread much more readily before the symptoms show up. It's a very big deal. Though news on Ebola virus has been muted since 2 American healthcare workers were admitted to U.S.-based facilities last month, the deadly continues to spread, according to the World Health Organization, with more than 40% of all Ebola cases thus far have occurred in just the last 3 months. You understand that? Well, that's of all time, suggesting the virus is continuing to build steam. Physicists at Northwestern University in Boston and other researchers are trying to figure out how far Ebola may spread and how many people around the world can be affected. Based on its findings, there will be 10,000 cases by September of this year, and it only gets worse from there. We're going to be talking about that some today. But don't worry, Bill and Melinda Gates have been working on a vaccine for it. And let me tell you, if Ebola goes really airborne and starts killing a bunch of people, I would want to take a vaccine, even if it was risky, to try to protect myself. The problem is you can't go to certified evil government and certified evil organizations that have been caught not once, not twice, but thousands of times jacking with vaccines and other medicines. Then they always go, you people are anti-science. Why, you can get, artificial immunity from vaccines. No, we know that. We're not Fred Flintstone. In fact, you're playing on the ignorant public out there. We read the inserts on the polio vaccine, on the hepatitis vaccine, on the Gardasil vaccine. We know all of them kill a percentage of people that take it, all sorts of autoimmune disorders. We know the anthrax shots they gave the troops in 3 different rounds killed hundreds of them, sickened tens of thousands. It's all on record that A, they don't care what's in the vaccines, and B, they're putting things in them. This is a government, I'm going to say it again, that for 48 years gave black people vaccines that were really syphilis. And first when Tuskegee broke, they were like, we let black people have it and then let them spread it and didn't treat them. And then it was like, we actually let some of them, actually contract it. We would give it to them. And then, actually it started with, we had to have a controlled sample, so we would give it to the blacks in the local clinics. It was just unbelievable, folks. And the reason the scientific technocrats did that to black people, poor Appalachian whites, and Native Americans was because they were poor and nobody would listen to them. The globalist, the eugenicist, would have done it to everybody if they thought they could get away with it, and now they do. In fact, it's mainly upper middle class people that run out and get their daughters the multi-$1,000. It's over $1,500 last time I checked. Three-round Gardasil shot. And all these soccer moms drive up in their Mercedes. They take their daughter in. And they get the first round. And then the girl's in bed for a week with a headache and blood on the brain. And, you know, loses 10, 15 IQ points. But mama takes them back in and slams them again. And then usually by the second round, they have such bad epileptic seizures that a lot of moms get smart and don't give them the third round. And it's a goodly percentage. It's a small percentage, but it's a good percentage that end up dying or having autoimmune disorders and epilepsy, narcolepsy. I know people who went and got the Gardasil, women, who now can't drive because they have narcolepsy. And then one of the women I know 2 women that have told me about this, that I've known for years. Another one now is developing epilepsy at like, I think, 34 years old. No epilepsy in her family. It's not genetic. I know 2 talk show hosts in Austin that took the H1N1 vaccine 5 years ago, and both of them got their hands and feet totally numb. One of them, the feeling hasn't come back 5 years later. And they went to their doctor, and the doctor said, oh, yeah, you've got Guillain-Barré from the vaccine. And this talk show host, I've been on their show many times. I'm not going to even say their name. I told them not to take it, and it still happened. I ought to try to get that talk show host on and just debate him about it. Because a lot of times people, once something bad happens to them, they double down again, believing in the system. And within this whole vaccine debate is just a case point example for everything else, because we know fluoride causes massive IQ reduction, 7-fold increase in bone cancer in men and boys, increased pancreatic cancer, increased bladder cancer, bone cancer. I already mentioned that. Just literally hundreds of things. It's just absolutely, it's the worst thing you could take that doesn't kill you pretty much immediately. And there's hundreds of other chemicals that they add under the name of fluoride, and it's a fact. It's an absolute, total, incontrovertible fact. And I know all sorts of Democratic Party elites here in Austin through a family connection. And they will literally laugh at you and pour tap water and say, I love my tap water. They've done studies. It tastes better than bottled, which all those studies are completely fake. It's come out. I mean, we've gone out with real filtered water versus tap water. Almost every person wants the filtered water and says it tastes better. But it's a religious sacrament. It's a religious belief in the state. And that's what Obama and Joe Biden and John Kerry, we got to get these clips together and put them all together. And they say, believe, keep the faith, stay with us, stay with government. It's not some bad tyranny around the corner. Believe in it. It's going to deliver. Keep the faith is a Catholic saying. They are now reduced to literally saying, keep the faith, government is the religion. And for people that believe in the system and have worked in it so far, it has delivered. But it's also delivered an empty, soulless culture of dependent people, both in the governing and corporate, but also welfare class. It's created a system based on fraud and graft and connections and insider deals, not on real production. We're going to talk about the cloud coming up, that if you can hack the cloud, you can get, if it's the Apple cloud, I think they were saying Just the United States, there's something like 70 million people on it. People are always saying with my iPhone, you ought to be on the cloud. You could store more photos and videos. I'm like, no. I don't want people having access to that. Oh, you don't know anything about tech. So now Kate Upton and the rest of them and the Hunger Games lady, their naked sex pictures and stuff are reportedly, I didn't go look at it. One of my friends did. He said it's pretty wild, the Kate Upton stuff, a bunch of it. And, I mean, what did you think? You stored videos with your boyfriends and stuff that you shot on the cloud up on big, giant, basically NSA servers. Humanity has developed unbelievably powerful technologies on so many fronts that are being turned towards control, turned towards social manipulation. And according to DARPA, who invented the internet and set up the modern infrastructure we live under, within just a few years, devices are coming out where they won't store data natively, or very little. You'll be forced onto a cloud-like system. Cloud computing, headed up by Amazon, Google, and Apple, Oracle, Cisco, and others, openly admits that they're co-housing their servers with the NSA and the CIA. And that Microsoft has basically been part of the intelligence combine since its founding, along with IBM. So when I talk about hundreds of stars having their photos grabbed by a hacker who was able to break into the Apple cloud, it's a fact that these systems make us insecure, not secure. All you had to do was get into the cloud, search by their names, find their accounts, and download it. And I have nothing to hide on my cell phone. It's like photos of my children and sunsets and things like that. But if you don't turn off the function, it geolocates every photo. It tells people where you're at when you take a photo if you tweet it, if you don't go remove that function. Imagine what that does for thieves and criminals and governments. See, and it was all built just like, if you go back more than 15, 16 years ago, MIT, DARPA, the Department of Transportation, and the same thing in Europe and Asia, all standardized, would have these big meetings in London and Chicago and Sydney and Tokyo. You could go read the minutes of the public meetings about how there'll be surveillance robots on every street corner and drones and armored vehicles, and everything you do will be up on a big cloud, and they'll be able to control your speech in real time, and how all the cars would have a standardized GPS tracking to tax you and track you by the mile. And then I watched them phase it in, put the boxes in the last 5 years globally, and now they're passing regulations to make it the law to tax you by the mile. It's all happening. And I'm going to say it again, all premeditated, all decided by global governance corporate boards that are unelected. Just like the Trans-Pacific partnerships, the North American partnerships, the EU partnerships all start as trade deals, and then pretty soon they're running the countries and the countries have no power. And then what does the EU and global governance model do when it has control of you? Paul Watson did a video report on this yesterday that was very powerful that I want to get and play in the next segment. EU to ban toasters and vacuum cleaners because of, quote, global warming, and put a tax on all the others you buy at the store. Now, why would they do that? Because it's about control. If they can tell you that you can't have a vacuum cleaner, I mean, they're cutting them down where the vacuum cleaner won't even clean. They can push you back to the Stone Age. And then government districts get a load of this, they get waivers on it. It's about controlling technology at its source. It's about setting precedents that we tell you how big your toilet is, what type of light bulbs you get, how big your yard can be, how many kids you can have, how many times you can go on vacation, how much beef you can have. This is all their Plandopolis model on record from their own words, where from cradle to grave, social workers will run our lives. And it's here. And it's premeditated. And I get up here on air and say, don't let the Department of Transportation or Obama, with an executive order, start the forced taxation of cars by the mile. And people just say that doesn't exist, it'll never happen. And we'll never get Obamacare either. We'll never, ever see Obama just legalize all the illegals by fiat. Already done it. We have to wake up that we have bad people who have bad plans for us and our families in charge. I'm going to come back and just go through huge news on the Middle East. Absolutely huge. Where Al-Qaeda is basically attacking all over the world.
Celebrate the spirit of freedom and liberty upon which our nation was founded at InfoWarsShop.com. Molon Lave is ancient Greek for come and take it. This popular design combines both classic Greek Spartan imagery with modern M16 assault rifles. Now available in women's tees and proudly made in the USA. And now you can protect yourself from corrupt cops with the InfoWars dash cam. It's your car's black box that records all that the driver sees and hears. And introducing the Block It Pocket. It renders your phone undetectable while protecting your private data and your health. Or take back your privacy and protect your personal information by getting your very own Detractor cell phone pouch. So get incredibly high-quality, freedom-based products and help fund the revolution at InfoWarsShop.com.